tell me. No, don't move. I can see you. I can see you. I can't make the names right now. I can see you. Huh? All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're here for DOTS, and we're going to flash up the slides in a second here. All right, hold on. We're going to work on an EV issue initially. Sorry?
Yeah, and several people here on accident and they are somewhere. But none of our centers are reporting. So sometimes we have this year
How many? 70 plus? We're down a bunch. All right, so we have the slides up, so why don't we get started? Hopefully, again, you're here for DOTS. I'm Roman Daniliou with my co-chair,
Tobias Conrom.
So let's get started. Next slide, please. We graciously have a note taker. Frank is going to cover that. Do we have a Jabber scribe? All right, awesome. Perfect. Thank you for the Jabber scribe, and the blue sheets are going around. Next slide, please. So we have an agenda up. There's just been a little bit of tuning from what you saw on the mailing list related to time. Would anyone like to bash this agenda? Please come up to the mic.
Okay.
Okay, let's move forward. So we have a usual order of affairs here. We're going to talk use cases, requirements, architecture. Then we'll get into the protocol discussion, and we're going to have some exciting conversations related to our hackathon and our interop testing. Next slide. Okay, a lot of activity since we got together last. We did have a virtual interim in early October, and we've seen a ton of discussion on the mailing list related to implementation experience. Next slide. And I just wanted to call attention to something new in the relative kind of last week or two. We're trying to get more content organized. We obviously use GitHub a lot. We have some implementations. So wanted to put that all in one place. So there is now content on the DOTS track wiki. In GitHub, you'll find working copies of almost everything that's cutting edge there, and the issue trackers are live there. So if you want to point out something related to a particular draft, that's in there. And the different editor teams right now are trying really hard as we're trying to get to working group last call on various documents to really be transparent on what are the outstanding items there. Then just lastly, just to point out again, we have 2 live implementations. You can see them referenced there, and we also have a public test server that's also up and running that you could, if you're building an implementation, use to help you. Next slide. Something I want to talk about later as we go through the different drafts is we're behind on some of our milestones, and we need to crisp up what we want to do about all of that. All right, so with that, why don't we get started? First up, we have Roland Dobbins, who's going to be remote, and he's going to be telling us where we stand with use cases.
Roland, can you please step?
Roland, can you please step to the mic in Meet Echo so I can put you on the presentation? Yeah, something is happening or not? No. Sorry, the screen. Okay, what's our alternative? Yeah. Okay, Roland, if you are having trouble connecting, then we will move to the next one, which I believe is Andrew, if I remember that correctly. I hear you. Hello? Roland?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Okay, so then, perfect. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, I assume that I'm going to have to assume that you guys are showing the slides because I don't see those.
Yes, I am doing so. I'm currently on your cover page.
Yeah, it's not showing up here. So let me actually grab my local copy here really quick.
There is some audio challenges to hear you. Can you speak either closer or louder? Headset?
Okay, yeah, I'm using that as increase the microphone gain here. Just one moment. And we can accomplish that. This is any better or not.
We're still having a lot of difficulty, Roland.
Okay.
We can't hear you. It's garbled. I'm sorry, what?
Hi, Aaron.
Okay. Roland, can you try to reconnect as a troubleshooting mechanism? The MeetEcho team here is trying to troubleshoot.
Oh, and try your headset on when you reconnect. And apologize for the room for the delay. Yeah.
And if we could ask subsequent presenters, if you have a headset, could you get it ready?
Tobias and Roman, can you hear me?
Yes. Is this
Okay, good.
Andrew?
This is Andrew. Yeah, how's the audio quality?
Actually, you are fine.
Okay, good. Glad to hear.
Maybe we should move with you and swap the two slots. And so Andrew, then please, you go ahead, and to Roland, you're gonna come right after Andrew.
All right.
I have your slide up.
Okay, great.
All right, so everyone else following along remotely, we're switching to the requirements slide deck, and Andrew, the floor is yours.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there for this meeting, but thank you for accommodating the remote presentation. We'll start with a pretty brief overview of the remaining work with the DOTS requirements draft. This is revision 07. Can I have the next slide, please? I think the major work is really an attempt to address some heartbeat concerns that were brought up at the IETF 99 meeting in the wake of some implementer feedback. We've also had the good fortune to get a lot of working group feedback in the interim. Lots of pull requests. Thank you very much, everyone. We've addressed a lot of editorial, minor editorial issues, some misspelling, some rewording, some clarifications, and we do not have any issues open on the GitHub tracker currently. That doesn't mean we are not anticipating anymore, but there are no open issues at the moment. May I have the next slide, please? So the first issue to come out of discussion around the heartbeat in the wake of some of the implementer feedback was this idea of a zero heartbeat mode in which a DOTS client might be able to just request mitigation without having to establish, continuing heartbeats between the client and the server. This would have been just a minor change to the requirement level for an implementation. But in subsequent discussion, we also uncovered the need to have some heartbeat rate flexibility, especially during peacetime. There were some concerns raised about the potential load that clients could impose on a server by overwhelming it with heartbeats, especially when we're talking about having a heartbeat rate at around 30 seconds, at or below 30 seconds. So this revision of the draft attempts to create space for both of those considerations. What we have currently is that the heartbeat rate must maintain NAT bindings when mitigation is active. So there must be a heartbeat rate that's at 30 seconds or below when a client has requested mitigation, and that the heartbeat rate is flexible during peacetime. We do not, this is something that we've also gotten some feedback on, so we anticipate adjusting this slightly. It would be useful during this meeting to get some discussion of that as we press toward working group last call. But I believe with addressing these concerns, we'll have covered a lot of the remaining work. May I have the next slide, please?
Page is up. Remaining issues.
Okay, great. Thank you. It was just a little slow to update on my end. All right, so there's also been some on-list discussion of NAT considerations. It seems like a lot of this can be covered in the architecture, which I will cover in the next presentation that I'm doing. But it's not clear to me that there's any impact on the requirements as a result of this discussion of NAT considerations. In going back through the archives, I don't see anything that means an obvious change to the requirement, but other members of the working group may disagree with me. I believe Artyom brought up the possibility of black-white list conflict resolution. My impulse is simply to say that white list will supersede black in this case. But again, the working group may disagree. And finally, there was a discussion raised by John Shallow and furthered by Tiru on the issue of ordered ACLs. It sounds like a recent NetMod ACL model draft has added ordered ACL sets, which we would need then to potentially address in the requirements themselves. But I believe this is all that we have remaining. May I have the next slide? Other than that, we are looking to go to working group last call, and I hope that we are. We've been at the verge of it for a long time, and so I hope we're actually seeing the end in sight. And I believe that does cover it.
Okay, we have a line forming at the mic. Andrew, are you ready for the questions?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Andrew, Fleming Andreasen here. Could we get the, what was it, 2 slides back again with the 2 open questions? Yes. In that discussion, I agree. I don't see any impact on the requirements. In terms of the other 2 items, black-white list conflict resolution and ACL ordering, do we really need to deal with that in the requirements, or is that something that we can just deal with in the protocol drafts themselves?
I'm entirely comfortable just handling that in the protocol drafts themselves. These were, I was asked specifically to bring these up for discussion during this presentation, so I am dutifully doing that.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm fine with dealing with that in the protocol drafts as well. Thank you.
Yeah, procedurally on the ACL ordering issue, we're tracking that as on the data model draft from the interim meeting discussion.
Any further feedback on the requirements draft? Shall we first move to use cases and then circle back to here?
You want to talk milestone?
Yes, that was the question.
Let's talk milestone.
Okay, let's talk milestone now. For requirements draft, like at least from a chair perspective, I think we have discussed this quite extensively, as Andrew has also mentioned. And the question is, are we ready to go to working group last call?
Fleming Andreasen, I took a look at the document before the meeting. I think it's ready. I think we're good here.
So this is Tobias with working group chair head off. Sorry that I'm not getting off the chair at the moment. I also read the document. I would agree with that perception. Should we ask how many have read this, or? Okay, so then could someone raise whether you have seen the last iteration or the one before the last and read it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, something, six-ish. So that's not, okay. Has anyone intention to study the current document and didn't have time yet to do so, to review it? One, two more, so you want to read it again. So, okay. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the AD. I mean, from my perspective, this looks like we could go for working group last call. Okay, so
Let's ask well, the author kind of team. I mean, Andrew, do you see any issue with going to working group last call?
No, I do not.
yeah, so then without objections, let's say in 2 weeks we initiate it for a 2-week call. So expect that in 2 weeks time from now, we will initiate working group last call, and it will have a duration of 2 weeks. So if you want to read it now, you can read it, and then you have plenty of time to post your comments. Okay, moving back to the use cases. Roland, can you hear us? Is your audio working now? Roland, we cannot hear you.
Okay. Otherwise, so why don't we move to architecture? Yes. All right, Andrew, can you proceed with the architecture discussion now? We have your first slide up.
Certainly. Sure. All right, it's me again. So let's get started. This is the 05 revision of the architecture draft. Next slide, please. All right. We had promised end-to-end scrub at the, I think, IETF 99, reiterated that intention during the interim, and that's end-to-end scrub is now complete, thanks largely to Fleming's work. It addressed a number of editorial issues and also captured a couple minor but important changes, I think. And we believe that the document is generally in good shape as a result of this work. One of the things that it does is highlight the optionality of the data channel. A DOTS client can operate entirely without using the data channel, but it can also take advantage of the functionality that the data channel offers to do things like install ACLs, black and white lists, and so on. But it's not necessary by itself as a component of the signaling. May I have the next slide, please? All right.
It's there.
Thanks. So as I mentioned in the requirements discussion, there was some discussion of NAT on the list. I'm sorry, I'm having some echo in just a moment. There was some discussion of NAT on the mailing list. Largely that is going to be focused on the architecture, so that's where we're proposing to move it. One of the issues that was brought up is DOTS clients signaling from private IP space through NAT to request mitigation. We need to discuss how the DOTS server treats that and how both ends interact when such a model is being deployed. And then the other thing that came up as a result of further discussion was how to request mitigation for privately addressed services, maybe using DNAT, NASNAT. Let's say you have a service that's being deployed in, let's say, a private cloud. You need some way to let the DOTS client know what mitigation scope is the actual scope it should be requesting from a DOTS server that might be in a different administrative domain. Next slide, please. So the only open issue right now is the request for a NAT consideration section. However, we do have one pull request proposing an addition of an appendix covering multi-homing. We've had some discussions among the among the draft team, and we're not sure that the full appendix is something that we need to have, but potentially some minor additional work regarding multi-homing. And when we have that complete, we do believe we're ready to press forward with the working group last call. Next slide, please. That does complete the update.
Okay, any comments on the architecture draft? No.
I do have
Yeah.
a question about
Yes,
the
please.
NAT considerations. I would like to know if the working group believes that I've adequately summed up the discussion of the NAT conversation on the list, so that we can capture it in the NAT consideration section. Silence is assent, huh?
No, folks are walking to the mic. Stand by.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, hi, Kaname Shizuka from NTT Communications. So, regarding to NAT, yeah, if the data channel and signal channel is kind of separated, then some of mobile application or something can do mitigation from dot client in mobile application. So in that case, that could be within a private IP address space. So I can hit upon such kind of the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? Okay.
Hello. Hello, this is Sajad. You said about the multi-homing and appendix. There is another draft from the Bangladesh. So what is why then there is a need for an appendix regarding multi-homing?
I agree with you. Yeah, I don't agree that we need an appendix covering multi-homing. This is a proposed pull request from another working group member, and my sense is that it's not appropriate for the document, but potentially some minor additional discussion of multi-homing may be.
So, I let Fleming. Okay, Fleming and then Roland.
Yeah, Fleming Andreas, and so I'm one of the co-authors, but just, for the benefit of the larger room. So, I mean, I'm in agreement with Andrew, both on the NAT considerations, right? We need to add that. I think it's capturing what has been discussed on the mailing list, and I also agree with the multi-homing. I think there is treatment of that in the architecture draft right now, and I think what's being proposed to being added right now, I think goes above and beyond what is really necessary for the architecture document. So we can look at it, and see if there's any wording tweaks needed, but I think an appendix is probably a little bit too much.
Okay, Roland comes next.
Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes, we can, and we can see you even for a second.
Oh, that's too bad. I need to change that.
Now it's but we can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement on the NAT considerations and also agree on the multi-homing stuff. The multi-homing stuff that's being proposed is basically TCP IP 101, and we don't need that in the WG documents.
All right, thank you.
So this is a difficult question when to discuss this, because I also saw the multi-homing draft and I was having exactly the same question. It's do you need an appendix, or is this a separate document, or neither? And maybe this is a topic for later today. Yeah, we defer this. Yes, we defer this to later, if that's okay. So let me come back to one question, who has reviewed the architecture draft in the last or previous to last version? Wow, that is super low. That means 3 reviews and wow, 4. Okay. Oh, I mean, should I maybe change the question? Is there even should we proceed? Wow, this is baffling low. Yes. Yes.
I believe we asked
Okay.
I believe we asked the question at the last meeting, and there was still interest in publishing the drafts, so maybe, yeah,
Okay.
you're right. Maybe Kathleen's right about the demographics.
Who has intention of reviewing it after this meeting going forward, so we know whether we are close to working group? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, 3, and 1 on the Jabber. Okay, so 3. Okay, Okay. One question to the authors. When do you think you will be finished with this last cleanup that you proposed on the page? The two open issues.
Yeah, speaking only for myself, I think the NAT considerations is very quick work. We have a lot of this already captured on the mailing list. And then the multi-homing discussion, I think we can probably discuss among the authors. We will communicate with the author of the pull request and see if we can get something that's agreeable to everyone. But I don't anticipate this taking much work.
Okay, so assuming it would be only net considerations within the next month?
Yeah, yes, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
So our original plan was to stagger working group last call of requirements and architecture. So that would actually work out quite nicely to go working group last call if the document would be done in a month. Okay, so we're going to defer the conversation related to the multi-homing until we talk multi-homing. Perhaps Roland's online, we can pivot to the use cases. Roland, would you be ready to present now?
Hopefully, if you can hear me.
Okay, we can, and we have your slides up.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide, please. Okay, so we made some very significant changes for 09. We reorganized the use cases, and the idea here was to make it so that those who are really focused on implementing dots, coders pretty much, could very quickly see what they needed to see in terms of the anticipated communications model. Whereas those folks who are more operationally focused and who actually care more about things that are externalities to the DOTS protocol itself that are key for network operators to understand, could see what they needed to see without either group having to really read some use cases that have lots of different variations, but that wouldn't necessarily be of interest to either party. We streamlined the DOTS communications model listings and changed some of the verbiage to make it more accessible. We added DDoS to the security considerations, which probably should have been there from the first. We added an inter-domain use case back in 08, an additional one that was suggested by the working group, so thank you for that. Next slide, please. We need more feedback on the home network use case. We just got some from Fleming and from some other folks, that's good, but we need more WG feedback on that. Question for the working group, do we need a use case which involves DOTS gateways? I'm inclined to think that we do, but we need to hear from the WG. Do we need any additional intra-organizational use cases? And if so, we would love to hear the specifics of the use cases that WG member participants think should be added. And of course, any additional feedback would be greatly appreciated as well. Are we essentially ready for working group last call? I don't think so quite yet. We just got some additional very good feedback on the list that our reorganization and refactoring of this draft has been good, that we need to go through one more iteration. So I don't think that we're quite ready yet, but we're close from a draft organizational perspective. Next slide, please. And that's all I had. Very open to feedback from the working group at this point.
Fleming Andreasen. So I agree. I don't think this document is quite ready for working group last call yet. We got some comments. I think, Roman, you made some good observations as well. I would encourage, though, the group to get this to working group last call pretty quickly. I think, should we say, the return on further investment, right, is diminishing at this point, and I would like the group to start focusing on the protocol drafts. So if we can get to that sooner rather than later, I think that would be good.
Sure. We're prepared to have this read in a week or so based on feedback from the working group, either in this meeting or on the list. On the list is always very helpful because it's documented for everyone to see and for them to comment on as well.
So from working group chair perspective, definitely a very strong encouragement to have all discussions on the mailing list. I think we have observed there were a couple of side channel discussions, which I believe at this stage is not so helpful. I think this should all go to the mailing list. Yeah, I also don't think we are ready there yet. So maybe one question, who has reviewed the version 08, 009 or 09 of the use cases draft? Hands up. Okay, so it seems we are hit again by demographics. That's just 4.
And in fairness,
And it's,
we're just
yes,
right.
yes, these were just the last, but there were significant changes on the last 2 refs. Who has plans to review the draft in version 09 now going forward in the next 2-3 weeks? 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's a couple of hands. Good. Okay, so that's good. Yeah, I think.
Let's wait for that.
Yeah, so let's wait for the review, but also to the author team, please do not wait for the review and make your vision as it is now, so we can proceed as fast as possible to a working group last call.
Sure. So the feedback that we've received already about further refactoring of the organization, we can go ahead and implement that now without additional working group feedback. But of course, we would like additional feedback, prior to trying to go for WGLC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have to juggle the schedule just a little bit. The presenter for the multi-home draft and the signal and data channel is not available until 2:15. So if we could swap further architecture discussion with discussion about our hackathon report in the interop. So Kanami, would you mind coming up and talking to your slides? So if any of you have been watching the mailing list, you've probably noticed that there is a significant uptick in volume related to implementation reports and that banging on the signal and data draft. So I wanted to reiterate kind of on behalf of Tobias about how fabulous that is. So John, thank you for kind of coming with the implementation. Kanami and your team, thank you for banging on your implementation as well and driving that feedback to the working group. It's really phenomenal and accelerating our progress to closure. So awesome work.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm Kaname Nishizuka from NTT Communications. So we did first interoperability test at this hackathon. So I'd like to report about the activity on the hackathon. So that working group is aiming to make our protocol to be standardized in this year. So now we have several individual implementations. One is a Godot from NTT, which is open source project. So all of the codes are available on GitHub. NCC groups have proprietary implementation. So this first interoperability test between them at this hackathon is a giant step for proving it works. So what happened in the hackathon? So the 3 active projects are conducted parallelly with 7 participants. So it includes 3 remote participants from Tokyo, London, and Nanjing. And their main project is, as I said, interoperability test of 2 individual implementations. And also, 5 people did added new features and extensions to the open source implementation. And one person tried to integrate it with a detection system of Mirai botnet. Next, please. So then we won an award of best open source project. Thank you. Next, please. So first, I'd like to report about the interop testing. So John Shallow from NCC kindly participated in this hackathon and interoperability testing remotely from London, even if it was almost midnight. Thank you, John. Yeah. Next, please. So this is the result of the interop test. We tried to make it green, and we managed to do that by changing the code during the hackathon. Unfortunately, because of lack of the functionality of Godot, which is the open source project, it lacks the functionality of status notify and efficacy update and heartbeat. So we only tested the rest of the functionality on messages on the signal channel. And NCC's implementation already have all of the functionality of these messages on the signal channel. So we tested Go client against NCC's .server, and also we tested NCC's .client against Go server. So due to the time limitation, we couldn't conduct all of the tests, but we are continuing to do those tests even after the hackathon.
So before we get off that slide, can I ask a couple questions? So green means the interop between the two implementations worked. Yellow meant it did not. And then the internal testing was, correct me when I'm wrong, the internal testing is one implementation just connecting back to itself.
Yeah, that's right. So internal testing means internal testing between client and server of those
The same implementation.
the same implementation. Okay. Then yellow box is include not tested pattern, and also it includes tested but failed pattern. So sorry, it is getting together in yellow box, but yeah.
And could you clarify the third column? So I was aware of the NCC implementation, the Godot's implementation, and then there's a Huawei implementation related to internal testing. Could you explain that?
Yeah, Huawei is trying to expand the open source project. So they have now its own implementation based on the Godot. So they they added the functionality of efficacy update. So they tested internally those functions by themselves.
Thank you.
So here's what we proved in the interop. So now we can start and handle mitigation from each client of a dot signal channel of SCOP and TTLS by mitigation request of SCOP put, get, and delete. Then dot server of both ends can activate the mitigation action by themselves. So as I said, we tested both client and server functionality each other. Plus, NCC's group's implementation can act as a dot gateway, so we proved that relayed mitigation requests can work over multiple organizations. So here's the general feedback to dot working group. We had a lot of implementation experiences. For example, most of the code modification was related to encode and decode of CBOR mapping. Sorry, here is a typo, not co-op, CBOR mapping. And there are many implicit specifications we need to figure out and agree on. So we will do feedback about the description of the content of the draft. And also, we assume that approximately 60% of the signal channel spec has been proved to work. So the rest will be done at or by the next IETF. Here's the feedback from my side. Before the interrupt test, we prepared these things. I and John agreed on port number and URI path. The port number is supporting the 06 version of the signal channel draft, and URI path is supporting 07 version of the draft. And we fixed CBOR mapping, which was pointed out by John, and we updated data models in order to support the latest signal channel draft. We updated code during hackathon, which includes the omitting the empty null entries in request, and we fix the response body. The third blade is the most important feedback to the dot working group. In order to find the unintended behavior, we need test scenario which covers all of the situation of the request and response type and normal and erroneous behavior. So the test scenario should be listed and shared with working group. So we will work on that. And next two slides include NCC group's feedback to dot working group. They updated code during hackathon. Several JSON mapping fixed for null entries, and they removed null entries confusion and deleted null entries in any response. And they added support for multiple mitigation requests within the single put. And actually, dot's client of NCC crashed our dot server. So that is a problem on my implementation side. But John disabled signal channel signal configuration request and heartbeat. So still we are intensively working on that. So and also John is also continuing work. So he already have fixed some functionality even after the hackathon. So the second point was already fixed yesterday. So these questions from John and I is listed here. So first one, should null entry be allowed? Should a null entry of type object be allowed when definition is array? So as I said, some of null entries was included in our request. So John's implementation is tolerant enough to accept such null entries. But the question is, should it be strict or not about the null entries? Okay, and the second question is about the lifetime in the request. So we sometimes use requests which include a lifetime 0. So John's server treated lifetime 0 request as if the lifetime is 0 in request, John set the lifetime of that mitigation request to the default value of the his dot server. But it is not explicitly written in the signal channel draft. So what should happen when lifetime equals 0 request is requested by dot client? It should be described in this draft. And the third question is very important. Should there be support for multiple mitigation requests within a single put? So in the signal channel draft, the mitigation request is array. So it can be, it is in this specification, it can be the multiple mitigation requests can be is valid, but if one of the mitigation requests in single put is corrupted and one is normal, so what should be done on the server side? So that is the question. So what should be done if the multiple mitigation request is in a single put? That is the question. So okay, so before moving to the second part, I will accept the questions and comments from the room.
I mean, does anyone have any specific ideas on the answers to the questions that Konami has listed there? Does anyone have feelings?
I'm sorry, this is not an answer to the question. Just this is my question. So is this interoperability test cover the use cases defined in this group. So I'm not sure how many use cases are tested in this hackathon.
Okay, thank you for the question. So not all of use cases are covered. So this is the first interoperability testing. So we just focusing on the messages on the wire itself. So we checked that we can convey the information over the signal channel. And also we tested both end can encode and decode messages. And so then we tested the most basic use case of those.
So I have a related question. So there, from what the interop matrix, it looked like those are all signal features. Were any of the aspects related to the data channel explored?
Yeah, so as I said, this is the first interop test. So I talked with John beforehand, before hackathon. Then time is limited, so we need to concentrate on signal channel first. Okay. Then so after the implementation of data channel, after updating data channel draft, update of data channel of our implementation in order to support the latest data channel draft. After that, we will test with John. Yeah, maybe it will happen before or at the next IETF.
Awesome. Actually, this is really cool. I have a question. So we tested now like two and a half implementations, but I remember from previous discussions that there were a number of other parties who might also consider implementing this. So are there any people in the room or companies who would like to join this interoperability test? Are there any other implementations out there at this moment that we should test or that would like to provide feedback about whether the specification was clear enough? Because we learned from the hackathon that there was some improvements to be done.
Yeah, we hope to have some news in the near future.
Okay, so this was Andrew, I believe, on the mic.
Yeah.
Any other comments? That might be like one in the future, maybe. Good. We still have these open questions. Can you, I assume you will post them to the mailing list?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Would that make sense?
To the mailing list and into GitHub, into the issue tracker. That would
Okay.
be great. Good.
Okay.
Okay, so next part is from Huawei. So Fran, could you me? Sorry, I'm not sure I can tell what you did precisely.
Okay, it's Frank Xia Huawei. Can you go down to the? I just want to say that as Konami has said that in this hackathon activity, we have several players in this activity, and Huawei has provided our implementation. Our implementation is mainly based on the current GoDOS open source project, and we added some DOS protocol itself features such as the efficacy update and the status update features, and we do the internal test in our company. But still, for some open source policy in our company, we cannot bring code come here. So that's why we do our internal test, and we have some test result in our slides, but we I think if anyone interested, we can show anyone. Yeah. So in addition to these existing protocol features, we also want to do one thing that we also are very interested that whether DOS protocols can be extended for some vendor-specific use. So we use this chance to add some more attributes to the vendor-specific attributes of the DOS signaling messages, and we test two features. One is we call it the global IP reputation sharing functions. So that means that if the DOS client can analyze the attack information and send this send the identified attack source information to the DOS server, so this information can be intelligence shared with the other client. So we extended the current. Because current protocol, we think that is a very minimal function set. So we try to do test if it can be valuable for more functions. So that's one thing. And another thing is that we think that the near source attack mitigation is also very important. So we also use extending. We also test the another feature is how to extending the current DOS protocols to do the outbound or the near source attack mitigation. I think these two extended tests are all passed. So maybe I think if we finish the first stage of DOS protocol, we can consider it how if it's possible, we can do more things based on the current work. So that's our main goal. But firstly, I think the greatest achievement for our test is that we have to do the basic protocol interoperability test. That's a great success for this time. Yeah, that's all.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to continue moving with the protocol discussion. So next up, we'd like to talk about the signal and data draft. Med, can you step into the queue so we can get you patched in?
Matt, can you say something?
All right, Med, you're in the queue, but we don't hear you.
Do you hear me or you?
We hear you now.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. We have you up in front of the signal and data channel slides.
Okay, so thank you, thank you, Roman. So apologies again for not being able to attend the decision from the beginning. So this is an update of the data. The signal channel and the data channel. So this will reflect the main changes and to show you the main changes that we have done since the last IETF meeting. So next slide, please. So just a reminder that there is a GitHub in which we are maintaining the latest versions of the draft. So please feel free to fill requests there and to add any contribution that you would like to see integrated in the draft. The link is provided in the slide. Next slide, please. This is something that we have agreed and discussed during the last IETF meeting, and after all, so we agreed to use a distinct port number for the data signal channel. So we have updated the draft to point to the new request from IANA, and also we have updated the draft to use a well-known URIs for dots. So these two updates are now reflected in the document. Next slide, please. These are 2 points that were discussed again in the last IETF meeting and also in the mailing list. The first one is to provide a recommended value for the lifetime when there is no value indicated by the DOTS client. So the value is set to 60 minutes, and there is no objection or no other proposal to use another distinct value. And the another major modification, which may have some implication on the privacy, is that we allow that a DOTS gateway to insert the client identifier.
in case the DOT gateway is aggregating multiple clients, so that the DOT server has the information about the original clients to be serviced. This information is not systematically inserted in the request. There are some situations in which there is no value to insert it. For example, if the DOTS gateway is located in the client side and not in the server side.
I think we lost you. Can you come back into the queue, please? Matt? Wonderful. Just a moment. Okay, you're back up.
Okay, thanks. This is a discussion which is related to a comment that was raised by Fleming during the last IETF meeting also, which is related to the indefinite lifetime. So the outcome of the discussion is that we clarify the text that was there in the signal channel, but I have also updated the requirement draft to align both documents so that there is no misalignment between the protocol specification itself and the requirement that was the origin of this text. So now there is this indefinite lifetime, which is supported by the client and the server, but the client should expect that the server may reject to assign an indefinite lifetime for our request. So there is some text that was added to the drafts and also to the requirements. Next slide, please. This is the outcome of a long discussion that we had with regards to setting the various parameters in the protocol draft, and especially the interval for the heartbeat when there is problems that are induced by the presence of firewalls and NATs. And the discussion was how or which value should we recommend in the document. The end of the story is that we ended up to align ourselves to other similar specifications to recommend a value which is the 30 seconds with a minimal value of 15 seconds. The rationale for this kind of setting was documented in the document, and we also encourage the use of other tools to discover the lifetime when there is a presence of the firewall and the NAT. But we are not recommending any protocol for this kind of solutions if you want to use a distinct value for the interval. Next slide, please. This modification was to reflect a comment from John, is mainly to distinguish between the two phases. The first one when there is no saturation in the link, and the other one when there is an ongoing attack. So during the peacetime, we have these two parameters. The first one, which is the interval between sending the heartbeat request and the maximum number of heartbeat that we can send to that can be exchanged both between the client and the server. So if you send your request up to a maximum and you still repeat it, if you don't receive any answer from the remote peer, that can be a DOTS client or a DOTS server, just you give it up and you conclude that there is a problem in the connection. But as we can show in the next slide, when there is a saturation in the link, the DOTS client has to continue maintaining the session even if it does not see any message coming from the server. But the server has to if it doesn't see any traffic or any message from the DOTS client, has to decide that the DOTS session is closing after exhausting the maximum number of heartbeats sent to the server. Next slide, please. This is an open question that we would like to hear from the working group. Is the current documents say that if you receive multiple requests for the same client and for the same scope, just we are deleting the lower the request with the lower mitigation AD. We are asking the working group if there's a problem with this approach or side effect of this kind of decisions. So we would like to hear from you all. Next slide, please. There is an open question which is currently which has been raised by John, is related to manipulating the access list. The first one is to allow to have multiple access lists per DOTS client, and the other one, which is related to this one, is how we can order the access list per DOTS client. For the second one, this is something which is currently not supported in the base ECL draft, so this is something that we can add to the document. And we are still waiting for some feedback from the working group about the support of the multiple ECLs, whether we can include it directly into the document or we need to discuss with the authors of the base ECL document. So if there are any feedback or comments, please feel free to share it with us.
Excuse me, Med, would you like to pause and maybe ask the floor whether they have any feedback on the issues you highlighted in slide 9 and 10?
Yes, yeah, it's.
So does anyone have a comment on the questions posed by Med in slide 9 and 10? I believe it's the next one. Related to the overlapping mitigation numbers or related to the ACLs and the ordering?
Yeah, slide 9. You said that the overlapping lower number mitigation IDs are automatically deleted. What is the criteria for the automatic deletion?
This was we are using the recent one, which was supposed to reflect the refresh situation. That means that the latest request is supposed to reflect the up-to-date situation from the DOTS client's domain itself. That was the rationale for that, but this may have problems in case there is multiple DOTS clients and each of them may have a distinct view on the situation on the network. So that's why we are raising the question, and we would like to hear from you and from the others if this kind of rationale is not appropriate or has some side effects.
Automatic deletion is, I think we need to discuss this and more. And if there is a certain request and with lower ID, it should be considered.
Okay, so we have Fleming, and then we have Roland in the queue, and yeah.
Yeah, Fleming Andreas. So one question for clarification, and maybe you just answered this, but does this apply between requests from different DOTS clients potentially? This is not just on a per DOTS client basis?
It's per DOTS domain, not per DOTS client basis.
Yeah, then I guess I am concerned, yeah, because you are beginning to assume that there is some level of coordination between those DOTS clients. And I don't know necessarily how they would do that. It's certainly not something that we've specified. So there would be side effects potentially of doing this. So yes, I have concerns, but I don't have a good answer either right now.
Okay, Matt, I'll move to Roland, and then please you will re-enter the queue so you can continue your presentation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have an overall concern generally with regards to ACLs. I'm not really certain that DOTS should be flinging ACLs back and forth because ACLs are very specific to the particular router, platform, line card, ASIC, and then the match capabilities. FlowSpec, supports ACL type policies. And so I think that we need to take a step back here and see, should we be trying to do FlowSpec's job here? It's an open question, I think.
Tobias Gonrom, Huawei, Working Group Chair, Head Off. I have 2 points. So I would also have some concerns if this is per domain. If you overwrite basically the lower mitigation IDs. And I have a question to something you said like several pages before, where you specified the mitigation lifetime default value to be 60 minutes. I'm actually wondering, do we even need to specify that? Or should we maybe better not specify that in the draft? Because like denial of service attack scenarios are evolving quite quickly, and there may be choices by vendors to be made about different mitigation default lifetimes. So maybe we shouldn't set one, especially also in the context of if you set it to 0, then it means default lifetime. So like there were questions like why do we have that? And maybe I'm just not getting it.
Yeah, just to answer, I don't know if you are hearing me.
No, Med, you're up.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, just to answer the last question about the recommended value. This is just a recommended value. So implementers can use other values if the if it is appropriate, and also the operators who are using the Dutch servers, and also they are operating Dutch clients or managing those Dutch clients can set it to a distinct value. We are just recommending a value so that we there is some guidance for the implementers to because if you, for instance, you set it to a lower value, you may have some other side effects that the mitigation request is not maintained as long as required to for the discount and so on. So this is something that we have asked to the list, and there is no objection so far for this value. So if you think that there are some problem, please re-raise the question in the mailing list so that we can discuss it there.
Okay, the next is John.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, and Matt, please re-enter the queue so you can later continue.
Okay, so basically, to do with mitigation ID, my understanding was the mitigation ID was unique per dot client, dot server, and per it wasn't across a whole domain. Mitigation ID is unique on that particular session, and it would be if there was an overlapping mitigation ID on that same session. It would be
Okay, so I think all you
with the ACLs, if we are going to drop ACLs, then we are throwing away half of the data channel specification.
Okay, so thank you. This is Tobias Gonum, Huawei non-working group chair. Just one clarification. I didn't want to say to remove, like, I think the 60-minute makes sense. Just like if you say this is a recommended value, that's fine. Declaring it as a default value in a specification, then that would suggest something like you should use that value, and that's where I was concerned. I'm fully with you to say, yeah, we recommend this value, and that's okay. Okay, it's more like fine tuning of RC language, should, must, and whatever.
The floor is yours again, Med.
Okay, so if you can display the next slide, please, Roman. Yeah, the next slide, this is something which is open and is there since the many IETF meetings. So we would like to know what to do with the material authentication. Should we should we recommend a solution so that the Dutch client and the Dutch server can mutually authenticate themselves? There are various options there that we listed in this slide and also the next one, and we would like to know what to do with those. Should we assume a particular solution to be specified, or we can leave it to the implementers so that they can decide what is the better option for them to achieve the mutual authentication between the Dutch server and the Dutch client, knowing that there may be some interpretability problems if we leave it open. So I won't go into all the options we have so far. So the most important for us is to know what the working group want us to do with regards to this point.
Any feedback from the working group on that question? Like, as a working group chair, I'm a little bit surprised that there is no strong debate about this. Like, I mean, mutual authentication sounds to me like a major question, whether you need this or not. So
No, no, that's not the question, Tobias. The question is not whether we want or we don't want the meteor authentication, is how we will achieve the meteor authentication. Meteor authentication is a must for the protocol, and this is something that is clearly called out in the requirement document, and we would like to adhere to that requirement. This is really important that there is that's should be supported by clients and the server. The question is how we will achieve that, and for us, and especially about the provisioning problem with the certificates and so on. Should we allow something that can be directly provisioned to the clients, and there is no coordination or no automatic way to get the certificate and so on? This kind of problems that are more, I would say, operational aspects.
Okay.
Bob Moskowitz, HG Consulting. On the certificates, can you please explain why you're limiting certificate method to using EST? I mean, when I read it, it seems like this is only use EST and not any of the other ways to acquire certificates.
No, that's not the point this slide is trying to reflect. The point is that this is one candidate that we are seeing there. If you want to do something which is automatic about the enrollment and so on, this kind of stuff. But if there are the other alternates or other solutions to do that, so please feel free to share it with us. And that's one point. The other one is whether we should specify a mandatory to support option in the document. And we are open to that, and we would like to hear from the working group how should we document this in the document. This is our main concern, not the solutions themselves, but how to do that and how to proceed with this kind of editorial aspect to reflect what a DOTS client and what a DOTS server must support with regards to meteor authentications, and how the required security credentials are provisioned to the DOTS client and to the DOTS server, so that we can achieve the meteor authentication which is imposed and required, and we would like to see it supported by the protocols.
I'll look at the text again, see if I come some wording to make it that EST is a recommended way, and there are others. You know, one other is work being done in Anima. Brewski might evolve as another potential method for the certificates. There's a lot of TBDs there, but EST can well be called out as here's something which works or can be made to work. And to be used accordingly. So let me again look at your text there.
Yeah, just one second comment about the Anima solution. This is something that we have pointed to in the DOTS server discovery solution. So this is something that we are also following. Yes, thank you for the comment.
And so before we go on if you go back to slide 11, I mean, the other meta question for the working group to decide is how many methods should be mandatory to implement, and how do we handle the optionality?
Unfortunately, I think those three are mandatory. You can't make it any one or even two of those three. We're kind of stuck for lots of reasons in some pre-shared key, some certificate, and the raw public key, which is used in those cases. Those are the three which are so now well entrenched in IETF work, that those are three which do. And having one certificate method like EST is a good way to go, and then leave it open for others to maybe evolve others as it goes. So no more than those three, and I don't think you can drop any of them.
Okay, shall we proceed? Oh, one question from Fleming, and then I suggest we proceed.
Yeah, maybe this is an offline discussion. Fleming, Andreas, maybe this is really a question for Bob. Why do we need all three, and do we need all three on both the client and server side?
Bob Moskowitz, Fleming, excellent question. And this is the server side answer. All three in the server, client can choose which poison works best for it. Because definitely the whole thing about raw public keys, there are clients which can't do anything but that kind of a solution. So this is server must do all three, clients select one.
Okay, and the queue just dissolved, which means the answer was sufficient. So please, Matt, proceed. Slide 12. Slide 12. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think this one is related to the previous points, so we can just move on to the next slide.
Okay, 13.
Yeah, that's the last slide. So if there are any missing issue that we didn't cover so far, the floor is yours.
One practical question. Have you taken a look at the Godot's specific implementation? Because to some degree, this should relate to your spec. This is a question to you, Matt.
Yeah, so we have already a section in the protocol specification document that documents the current Godot's implementation. Yes, so we are following that. Yeah, but I need to read and to refresh my mind about the latest issues that was found during the hackathon, so that we can align the specification and decide if there is any fixes that need to be added to the specification documents.
Yeah, sure. This was only 2 days ago, so no worries. Okay, shall we proceed? Okay, let's go multi-homing. So you stay on, and let me bring up your slide. Sorry, wrong one. Where's the one with multi-homing? Here we are. Okay, so we continue with you, Matt. Please continue for multi-homing.
Yeah, so this will be an update of the multi-homing discussion. This won't be about the content of the documents themselves, but about the logistics, how we can cover the multi-homing consideration in the current DOTS documents. So please, next slide. This is the homework I had from Prague, is to check how we can cover the discussion about the multi-homing in the existing documents. So mainly to check whether there are modifications that are required to both the requirement and also the architecture document. Next slide, please. So I started with the DOTS requirement. So there is some discussion on the mailing list, and also I have proposed text to Andrew to cover for me what I see as the main requirements there is that the clients must be able to maintain multiple sessions and to appropriately select the appropriate DOT server when they have to place a request. So this requirement text is really brief and concise. We don't want to go into specificities of the multi-homing to not overload the DOTS requirement document itself. So this text was published in the recent version of the requirement documents. So many thanks to Andrew. Next slide, please. The next document is the DOTS architecture. For this one, yes, there are some discussion about the multi-homing, but the discussion is really at a high level, which I see as a good point. And even the document mentioned that there are some extra care and planning to be done by the DOTS clients in a multi-homing situation. So the current text and the current discussion that we have in the individual document which describes the multi-homing is really something which is zooming on this part, so that to provide some guidance to implementers and to operators how they can operate the DOTS clients in multi-homing situations. So these are, for me, are complementary discussions. The current one, which I see as sufficient for an architectural document, which is already there, and the other one, which is in the individual document. Next slide, please. For the DOTS signal and the DOTS channel specification protocols, this is clear. There is no requirements on the protocols themselves. There is no modifications that we are required to do to the protocols themselves. So we are just using the DOTS signal and data channels as they are. But the problem is mainly on the behavior on the DOTS agents themselves and not the protocols we are using to establish the communication and to place the request by the DOTS client to a remote DOTS server. So this is a new text that was added to individual document to clearly call out this point, to say that there is no implications on the protocol specifications themselves. Next slide, please. So here we are. So there are some modifications that have been proposed to the requirement document. There is something which is still missing to address the practicalities and all the issues that are related to operational aspect of the multi-homing. So there are two approaches there. The first one is to go with the with updating the current architecture document, and there is already a proposal to in that direction to add the multi-homing discussion not in the core part of the document, but as an appendix, so that we can provide some operational guidance to implementers, or the other one, which is to consider adopting the current individual document as a standalone document, so that we can have one single document in which we are discussing all the specificities of the multi-homing. So I do personally prefer the second one, which is because this is really focused, but I'm open to any direction from the working group. We have both. There's a ROCO which is already sent to Andrew since 1 month, and the other one which is the standalone document. And this is the end of my presentation.
Okay, we have Roland coming to the mic.
Hi there, Roland Davis, Server Networks. So I think I had mentioned this previously in other meetings. We have considerable operational experience with protocols that are similar to what DOTS is going to do, and we don't run into any glitches or gotchas related to multi-homing. I think the paragraph that was on slide 3 is good and is something that we should consider, and we have this paragraph right here. That this is all that really needs to be said. We don't need to get into all the detail that's in this particular proposed draft, because it's more or less TCP IP 101, and I don't think that we need to get to that level of detail personally.
Fleming,
Andreas.
Ted, please rejoin the queue.
Speaking as one of the authors of the architecture draft, I would say I'm not in favor of adding this as an appendix. I think we have, per the previous discussion on the architecture draft, I think we have sufficient treatment of multi-homing in the architecture draft itself. So yeah, I would not vote for option 1 there.
Excuse me, Fleming, sorry, working group chair, just for clarification. So you say you would not go for an appendix?
That's correct.
Would you then say we should go for a separate document, or are you saying actually it's not needed?
I didn't say anything there.
Okay. Okay. Let Matt come back. Maybe a question from a working group chair perspective. Who has read the latest multi-homing draft? Could you do a show of hands? Oh, wow. This is like, okay, 1 person. Okay, so that's, yeah, that's basically, yeah, that's not. Should we go for this cover first?
I think we should decide on the first question.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry? Got it. So Med, in the room, if it's not clear, that it would appear that only 2 folks have reviewed this latest draft. So it's looking like we don't have enough readers to know what to do.
Sorry, one more question from me. I mean, we had this discussion indeed at IETF 99, and at least at that point in time, I had the impression we did not have enough information for multi-homing. So I just hear now there is sufficient information in the architecture draft as is. So has this been improved? Has this used some of that component? Or like, is the statement like, actually we were wrong at 99 and like it was already good enough?
So Fleming Andreas, and again, speaking as one of the authors, at least of the architecture draft, when we did the end-to-end review of the architecture draft, looked specifically at multi-homing in there, I felt that the treatment that we had in there was sufficient. I looked at the multi-homing draft as well. I'm not sure if it was updated subsequently, but I didn't see things that I thought were necessary for the architecture draft itself, at least. I think it's a question of, I mean, how many of these deployment consideration documents do we want? Should we focus our energy more on the protocols at this point? Maybe this is something that we defer a decision on, and we can see if there are impacts on some of the protocol drafts. I think Matt has indicated that so far, at least, he hasn't seen an impact on the protocol drafts. So I don't know how much of a need there is, but I would prefer to see the group investing energy again in the protocol drafts at this point.
And moving on to Roland.
Yeah, I want to second what Clement said in response to your question about what we were thinking at IETF 99. We really have all the considerations that we need already. This paragraph here that's on slide 3 suffices, and I really don't think that we need to spend a lot of time and energy on this moving forward.
Okay, I mean, feedback taken so far. Yeah, okay, so my co-chair just said we should take it back to the list at this stage. I think it's like...
Yeah, one thing that perhaps might help kind of clarify things, I think we're tossing around different terms here. Got it. So slide 6 speaks to how this draft is going to complement the DOTS architecture, but we're also talking about deployment considerations. So are those the same thing? Med?
No. There are two distinct levels of the same problem. That is that once you have the protocols and what you have your agents there are some another dimension in which is really key for the operation of your mitigation problem is that how your DOTS client is talking to the appropriate DOTS server and how the DOTS clients are sending the appropriate information to the appropriate DOTS servers. And all this kind of information they are not currently specified in the architecture. For instance, if you have just a simple multi-home situation, if you are talking to the wrong DOT server, the problem won't be solved. So there are some other considerations that need to be documented somewhere. Perhaps for some this is obvious, but I don't think so, because there are many problems and many considerations there that should to be documented clearly. I do think that there's something which is missing. This is, but fully agree with Fleming is that this are not the same level of the discussion.
Next one is Roland, and then Fleming.
Yeah, I disagree. This is such a basic issue that I think there's a lot of heat and light around this that I don't understand why this is considered to be such a complex issue that requires specific documentation beyond the paragraph on slide 3. I just don't understand it. I haven't heard the case made specifically here. I read the document and it just doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry. Maybe it's just my failure to comprehend.
Fleming,
Andreas. I mean, I agree with Matt that it goes beyond deployment consideration, right? There's an implementation aspect to it as well. But I think that's it, right? I mean, again, I don't see protocol impact right here, right now. And again, I would prefer that we focus our energy on, providing the deliverables that are there. I'm fine with trying to progress this in parallel, right, and see where that goes. But again, I think we should focus our energy on the deliverables that we have in place right now.
Tobias is coming up to the mic.
Matt, you're first.
Yeah, so just one clarification to the comment made by Roland. The requirement does only say what is required by the DOTS clients to achieve. And we need to understand how the DOTS client have to achieve this kind of requirements. And this is typically the answer that is provided in the multi-Herman document.
So, Tobias Gondrom, Huawei Working Group Chair, hat off. If it has no impact on the protocol specification, then I think we really need to think carefully where to put, like whether this is, like what is the impact of this. I have seen in other working groups discussions about deployment advisory, something like that. But then I would question why this is, like, if you would go down this way, then the question would be, why just for multi-homing? Is this such a singular problem that we should do just advisory for that or not? Yeah, so I'm torn between these things.
Med, do you want to respond to Tobias, and then Roland will be up?
No, I don't have any particular comment to this one. No.
Roland, you're up.
Yeah, Roland Evans, Urban Networks. Since Med is intending this more, I think, in the flavor of deployment guidance, it would be very easy for us to add this to one of these considerations that he's thinking about in one of the existing use cases that has a multi-homed type of scenario. We could simply work with Med to get some verbiage from him to stick into the use cases draft, if that would help.
If I may, Tobias Gondrom, Huawei, jump into the queue. I do not think we should add this to the use cases draft. I mean, if this is later about advice for the deployment, I really think we should get the use cases draft through the door and into working group last call. And if we need to provide later some guidance on deployment, then this shouldn't be in the use cases draft. My personal opinion.
Med, back to you.
Yeah, actually, there are two aspects in the multi-homing specification individual document. There are the a discussion on the use cases themselves and the discussion about the deployment considerations. I would personally agree with Roland that there is already one section in the use case, the working group adopted use cases document, which is describing one multi-homing use case, but this one is, yeah. One option is that we can complete this section with material coming from the individual document, and to leave the considerations out out from the use case. This is one option, Roland, and I am as far as we are documenting the problem, and as far as we are documenting the deployment that are likely to happen as a use case, it is fine by me.
Okay, maybe as a working group chair, I think we don't have many people who read the draft. In fact, we have only very few. So I don't dare to ask for anything consensus oriented in this direction at this moment. My proposal would be to put this back to the mailing list, to discuss there if you see a strong need, to also raise gaps if you see them in the architecture draft. So we had the comment that from the authors of the architecture draft that actually they feel it's sufficient. If you have specific points that you see that are not covered, then please raise them on the list so we can illustrate that and discuss about them. This is how far I'm going at the moment. Like, I'm not sure, Roman, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, the next question I add is, since so few have read it, I mean, are people committed to reading that? And we can let folks read it, and then perhaps we can facilitate something on the mailing list and pick this up again in an interim meeting that we're going to have before we get together again to help kind of facilitate our options. So my first kind of question is, are folks committed to reading the draft? So there's a larger pool of folks that can give us input. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, So I see at least kind of 4 folks, 5, sorry. So I think we'll be a little better informed when there are more readers. So, Matt, I don't want to leave this unresolved, but we're going to take this to the mailing list. Tobias and I will facilitate minimally. We'll get this teed up for some class of kind of resolution about next steps after we've had more readers at the interim meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And the next one is the server discovery. Matt. Oh, Matt, you're still on.
Med gets the award for catching the delivery of a lot of drafts. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yes, so this presentation will just summarize what happened since the last IETF meeting about the server discovery point that we discussed in the Prague meeting and also in the mailing list. So, next slide, please. So this is just the story about the motivation for this document, why we need to have a solution to discover and to provision the Dutch servers to Dutch clients. Currently, both the requirement and the protocol specification and also the architectural documents say that there are some magic way that can be manual or dynamic so that the Dutch servers are provisioned to Dutch clients. So we are just here in this document, we are providing the some dynamic means to discover this information so that there will be communication between Dutch agents themselves. Next slide, please. So in during the last IETF meeting, there was one comment that said that we have much more options there in the document, and we would like to shorten that list. So what we did is that we went back to the mailing list and we asked people if they have opinions how to shorten that list, and if there are some options that we can remove from the draft. But what happened is that the discussions confirmed the current approach in the draft, that is that one single discovery mechanism is unlikely because of the heterogeneous aspect of the various Dutch clients that may be solicited. So there is people are even asking for more solutions to be added to the list. For instance, there was the discussion about adding a discovery solution using the route advertisement, which is something which is broken. So we just abandoned to add it to the list, and you maintain the current list we have so far in the document. But there is one key comment that was raised by Russ, which is for me a fair comment and an important one to discuss by the working group, is that we need to cover both devices with name resolution capabilities and devices that are not that are able to solicit an underlying name resolution library. So next slide, please. So the outcome of the discussion we have and the comments, the detailed comments from Raj, is that we updated the document so that now a Dutch client may be provisioned with a list of IP addresses, a list of IP addresses together with a reference identifier that can be used for authentication purposes, or it can configure with a name. The name, when the name is provisioned to this client, the name will be used for 2 purposes. The first one is to resolve it into a list of IP addresses that will be used to reach the server itself, but it will be also used as an authentication reference identifier for a PKX, for instance, authentications. But when there is both a name and an IP addresses, the name will be only used for authentication purposes, and the IP addresses for reaching the server itself. But when there is only an IP address which is configured to Dutch client, we have this open question: is whether there are certificates that are built based on the sole IP address itself. So if we go back to RFC 61/2025, it told us that there are very few certificates, authorities that are issuing certificates based on IP address. So this was the main motivation why we discarded to include the IP addresses in the first version of the specification. But the argument from us is that if someone wants to deploy dots using the IP address as an entry for the specification, it can do so. So we don't need to. There is no. He don't think that there is a valid argument that we can forbid this kind of deployment option. So that's why we ended up to allowing this multiple option. That is that you can provision IP addresses, you can provision names, and you can provision a reference identifier together with a list of IP addresses. Next slide, please. So this is the updated behavior of the discovery solution. So there are so far the 4 alternate solutions to discover the dot servers. So you have the explicit configuration that can be local or can be automatic using DHCP and so on. We have the service resolution, we have the NSSD, and we have the Unicast. And the current text and as per the outcome of the discussion we have on the mailing list, say that at least the DOTS client must at least support one of these mechanisms, and we also add this wording to say that it should support all of them. And we also indicated for determinism perspective that there will be an order preference. So if a DOTS client is supporting many of this mechanism, it has to follow the preference order which is indicated in the document. So this is the key contribution from the document, which is basically the 4 mechanisms that we have in the previous version, but we just added further clarifications about the nature of the information that can be provisioned. Whether it can be an IP address, a name, or a combination thereof. Yes, Tobias?
Excuse me, Med, there, oh, you can see. Yeah,
Yes,
there's a
wonderful.
tweet
Just a quick comment. Tobias Gonrom, Huawei Working Group Chair Head Off. I roughly agree with the language terminology. I think you should use should in non-capital terms, not RC 2119, because otherwise you would have to explain. I think it would be too strong if you use it in 2119 terms. So my recommendation would to do the should in small.
Fleming Andreasen. Whenever I see 4 different choices and the aim is to have interoperable implementations, I start scratching my head. I get the fact that there is at least 2 different scenarios that we're trying to cover, right? One of which is going through a gateway and the other one is going direct. I don't see why we need 4 different options for that, though.
Fleming, please help us to shorten the list. That will be also, I would be happy also to have a shortened list. Please help us.
Kathleen Moriarty. So just a clarifying question on that. Is 1 MTI okay? That way we have 1 implemented, it doesn't specify which gets used.
Fleming Andreas, I mean, maybe the service discovery authors are in a better position to answer that. I'm not sure, because again, there are two different scenarios I think that they're trying to cover. I think we'd have to look more closely at that. But as a starting point, yeah, probably. Then you can say maybe not every single scenario is supported, right, in basic mandatory to implement.
Tobias Gonrom, Huawei, non-working group chair function. Actually, I think case number 1 is no discovery. It's local configuration. This is not a discovery. There's no protocol in this. So, like in this way, 4 is like overstating it. Number 1 is basically 0.
I guess you are talking about the local configuration, because in the first step there is the explicit configuration that can be done by automation. There are some extension to protocols, for instance, the DHCP, that are defined there.
Okay, we're going to go to Roland in the queue.
Sorry, Roland Evans, Arbor Networks. I want to point out a couple of things. That we anticipate that the majority of DOS implementations for quite some time are going to be basically 0.1 explicit configuration done either manually or via some local automatic configuration mechanism. Service discovery and all this stuff is really nice, but I think we're really getting ahead of ourselves. And I also want to point out that that anything that relies on DNS under DDoS attack conditions is unwise, generally speaking.
Med, if you want to comment, can you get back in the queue? Tobias?
Yeah, quick comment also, just as normal participant. I think this discovery is as I understood it, in most cases, not under attack conditions. This is in peacetime.
Yeah.
You actually end up in many cases where those who wish to have DDoS mitigation services are not pre-provisioned, and so they call screaming at 4 a.m. On a Sunday saying, "Help, help! I need DDoS mitigation services," and you want to be able to use dots if you can. And so that's why I'm trying to say that we want to make sure that certainly point 1, subheading 1 and 2 are supported. The service discovery stuff, again, I just really think we're getting ahead of ourselves here, and that we want to make sure that it's well understood by implementers and by operators that that reliance upon DNS, when attack conditions are taking place, can't be taken for granted. That's all I'm trying to get at.
Med, you're up.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is a fair comment from Roland. I understand that the reliance on DNS may be problematic, but as mentioned by Tobias, the discovery is happening during the peacetime and not during attacks. But anyway, this is something that the discussion that I would like to have together to continue, so that we can shorten the list, which is really a key for interoperability.
Got it. Next slide.
We have one more comment from Roland.
Yeah, I think we all agree on number 1 and subhead 1 and 2. The additional discussion needs to center around the other things, but certainly point 1 is a given.
Matt, could you please come back so we can continue?
Okay, so unless there is a further comment about the adaptive behavior, I think that the next slide is just asking for the feedback from the working group on how to proceed on the specification.
Further comments?
Tobias Gon from Huawei, non-working group chair comment. Actually, I think it's good. I like that we have a discovery mode. I think that can be useful. I can foresee that these topologies are not, they may grow faster than we anticipate maybe at this moment. So a discovery mechanism sounds good for me.
Fleming, Andreas, yeah, I largely agree with that as well. I mean, anything that goes above and beyond pure manual configuration, especially in this day and age, right? Obviously, you want something like that.
Not walking the mic hat off, +1 as well. I mean, having something I think would be really helpful. I think we got to arm wrestle over exactly what's kind of MTI and how many approaches we need.
Okay, so let's be transparent. The chairs had just a quick exchange of thoughts, like when and how should we proceed with this draft. Current perception is not so many people have read it. So ideally we would have wanted maybe to ask for adoption at this point, but I'm not sure whether this is suitable because we haven't. Maybe I should actually first ask the question, who has read the document? 1, 2, okay, so that's definitely not enough. Who wants to read the document? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, okay, a little bit. That's not tremendous amount. Should we ask for?
I mean, why don't we drum up some interest on the mailing list relative to that, to ask some folks to read it again. The turnout isn't so great in the room, and then we can decide where to go from here. Because I'm hearing positive things, and we, certainly with the caveats that have been brought up. So,
yeah, I agree. Let's put this for the review, and then we will raise this question at the interim.
Okay, Med, any closing thoughts?
No, thank you. Thank you.
So with the time we have available, there's a little bit of slack here for open mic, if anyone wants to come up and talk about anything related to the working group.
So, Tobias Gornom-Barre, non-working group chair. There's one thing that's kind of a little bit bothering me. Is we've been working on this now for like 1.5 years. We had a number of drafts, specification work. We have the first implementation with GoDocs, which is really, really great. But what's bothering me is that I don't see many commercial implementations. And it's like, kind of like, why is that? I don't fully get this. Like by now, actually, like commercial implementers should have caught up with the flow. And like at the beginning when this working group was founded, we had this talking, hey, this is really important. We need to do this. This is so important. But then, yeah, I don't see these implementations happening. So are they secret and I'm just like invisible, hiding somewhere to raise the moment this is all going to RFC? Are we too fast? Are we like off track? Are we not getting this? Is there any feedback from you guys that I'm missing the point?
Is it also, this is Kathleen, is it also possible that there are implementations that we're just not aware of? Maybe, are people implementing that they haven't disclosed that and they're free to disclose that?
Then they wouldn't be able to say so now.
Well, I'm asking if maybe they're ready to disclose it now, but they hadn't.
Yeah.
Just, throwing that out there.
Roland, you're up at the mic.
Now, one thing that I just noticed in general is that vendors often like to hang back until standards are adopted before they themselves invest the time to do implementation. And obviously, the implementations that have been done so far are very helpful, and we've got a lot of useful information that we've taken as input into the architecture and the protocols draft. And we want to see more, but I think that that's one reason, generally speaking, is that vendors are often hesitant to do pre-standard implementations. I don't know if that's the case, it's just a guess.
So did anyone understand that, and could they relay what he said? Because I'm sorry, Roland, I couldn't make out half the words. Maybe you could type it in Jabber for us, would you mind?
I typed it in the chat. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you a bit better. Do you want to try again?
A lot of vendors, unfortunately, like to hang back until standards are actually standardized. And so I think that that's part of the problem here, is that we're in a situation where we still aren't finished yet. We've gotten some great feedback from and lessons learned from the implementations we've seen so far. But I think a lot of vendors just like to kind of sit on their hands and wait until something has been standardized before they actually implement it. Maybe I'm wrong. It's just a guess.
Okay, so you said from the vendors who have implemented so far, can you share who they are? Or how many?
That's not what I said. I was referring to the implementations that were discussed earlier in this session.
So you're talking about hackathon when you
Correct.
said that.
And I apologize for being unclear.
Good. Tobias?
Okay, and well, just to clarify too, so with Tobias's point, there are many other working groups where they don't wait, like TLS, for instance, they've been hammering at code and security design problems for a long time. And it's held up publication as a result, but that's a good thing because they're correcting problems found. And so that life cycle is so helpful.
So Tobias Gonrom, Huawei, non-working group chair comment. So don't get me wrong. At least for my company, we intend to implement this. And you've seen that, like Frank joined this in the hackathon. I just feel like a little bit lonely, like with NTT and NCC and then Huawei. It's like I didn't expect us to be among the first adopters. I rather expected there's like all these other vendors who are so eager and that maybe we would be slower. So if there, maybe to your point, Roland, if there is like in your mind a list of vendors who are maybe not aware of this, or if you have some suggestions, like Roman and me, we can also go to them as the chair and like say, hey, are you aware of this? Are you interested? Can we help you in any way? Because I'm just confused at the moment why it's not so many.
Well, we have some good vendor representation in the working group. I can't answer for why we aren't seeing more implementations from the vendors who are actually participating in the working group. I'm not in a position to answer that question. I think a lot of the main vendors who need to know about this are engaged and aware. There's always room for more. But you know, if we look at the vendors that are involved, we have a pretty strong roster. So I don't think that awareness is necessarily the problem.
Okay, at least that's off my personal question. Any other questions? And I'm sorry for like hijacking the last 5 minutes. Good. So then let me just resume that one little piece. If you are aware of people who you think should be interested in this and maybe they are not aware of this, please feel free to come to Roman and myself anytime. We can like help how we can bring them in or like share information and so on. Because I think now we are really getting into the phase where this needs to be like code on the road. And with this, I hand back to Roman for, I think, some closing comments or questions.
Kathleen, did you want to say something?
Say your comments and maybe you'll address what my question is.
Yes. I'm wrapping up milestones, so different thread.
Okay, so I just want to run through the list of these to see how many of the foundational documents can you kick over really soon so that they're out of the way.
Got it. So the discussion we had was that in 2 weeks, we're going to go working group last call for requirements. The feeling is that given the state of the architecture document, we still need about a month worth of work before we can go working group last call.
All right, so that'll be a Christmas present?
I think realistically, it's early January.
Okay, so I enjoy Christmas, okay.
Correct, yeah. And then the use case documents, I think we got to talk a little bit because the document is not ready for working group last call.
Okay. All right, great. I think that'll help to get those moved.
And we, milestone-wise, of course, are not going to meet the December target of both the signal and data channel. And so we should come up with a realistic date for that. We'll probably discuss that a lot more at the interim meeting. Okay, so that's administratively all I have. Tobias, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Maybe one comment, as a personal comment from a chair perspective. I could imagine us pull the trigger on working group last call, even if a document is only in, let's say, close to but not fully finished yet state. And that is maybe something for you, the AD, to raise your hand and say, don't do that. But I actually see us doing that so we can wrap this up faster, like not wait until it's completely finished. And I see you nodding, so I take that, okay, that is indeed what we discussed and like what we proposed, that we will trigger and accelerate this and like push this car, even though not all riders are on their seats.
Right, right. So once you go through working group last call, whoever's shepherding it will assess the state of debates. And then when I do my review after that, I will look for glaring issues that might get picked up in the IESG to avoid them having to get picked up that late. So yeah, so if you find anything, we'll address it.
And maybe a second comment, I like to encourage for the architecture to actually go pre-Christmas, because ideally we should try to move this draft while our current AD is still our AD, and that might help things in the IESG process.
Yeah, yeah. So if I had it before Christmas, then I could get it on a telechat right after Christmas, and you guys could work diligently on every comment and discuss received to resolve them and post a version so that I can click my send button on an approved message. That would be great.
Yeah, I do think that is reasonable. I think we could probably get that done.
Okay, and I would just ask the editors to be really expedient in responses to updates or questions and comments.
So we'll move with that end of year optimism. That's great. Okay.
And thank you.
I think that brings us to a close. Thank you everyone for participating. To the remote presenters, thank you so much for your flexibility and your participation. I'm sure the time zone stuff was not exactly right for you.
Okay, bye-bye.
There's another blue sheet floating around.
Yeah, oh, who signed the blue sheets? Okay.
Who has the other clipboard? No.